Hi, I'm George the Antique Nomad. Come with me as I wander the country in search of valuable vintage, amazing antiques, and cool collectibles. We'll buy, sell, and trade at antique malls, shops, and shows, estate sales, flea markets, thrift stores, anywhere people go to find really interesting things that just aren't made anymore. So come on, let's go! Hey, it's George again, and welcome to the second episode of Flashback Fridays, which is flashing back to the second episode of my YouTube channel. When I started YouTube, I was doing Periscope originally, and I decided to put some of the Periscope episodes out on YouTube. And, you know, it was new to me. Periscope's a little different thing. You're talking to a live audience, so you kind of pause more and get involved with more things. And a lot of my subscribers now have no idea that I was doing this sort of stuff, so I thought it'd be fun to have a reaction video where we look at my original video and I'll talk about things I missed, things I overlooked, things I should have bought, interesting oddball stuff that's happening around the scene. And so if you haven't seen the original, it's still in my playlist, and that's why you'll see me talking over myself in this one. So if you would rather hear the original without any commentary, you can go see that too. But in the meantime, let's see, well, what a difference a year makes. This one is from Sturgis, Kentucky, and the Antique Mall in Sturgis. And let's get started. So here's the old intro, and we go right into it. And I am so close to that horse I can almost smell its breath, except it's made out of some sort of a resin material. It's got interesting age though. It really looks like aged concrete. The Antique Mall in Sturgis is out in the middle of nowhere, but it's actually a really great antique mall for being in such a remote place. And they always put a lot of really cool stuff outside on the walkway, and you can kind of see behind me there, they've got patio furniture. I've bought huge concrete planter baskets, and they've got sinks and architectural stuff, and they just leave it out there because it's such a little town that they have no worries about theft. Plus all that stuff really weighs a ton, so who's going to steal it really? Yes, let's pat Dobbin there and hope that his paint doesn't fall off. And then we will turn around and go in the door here. The folks who run this place are really nice. I've been shopping here for probably, 10 or a dozen years at least since I first discovered it. It's a little tiny town, but because it's called Sturgis, they have a big bike rally. It's called Little Sturgis. It's the Midwest equivalent of the one up in the Dakotas. They didn't have it this year, unlike the one in the Dakotas though, which turned out to be a good thing. Now, when you come in here, one of the first things that's really cool is on the right here. They've got all this old stuff that is from the town of Sturgis when it was a booming coal mining and farming town and had about twice as many people as it does now. It's got about 500 now, had about 1,000 at the peak. But there's the old safe from the bank, and they've got old pictures and ephemera from local businesses that are long gone, and old bicycle that somebody in the area had. A lot of times in these little towns, antique malls turn into the de facto historical museum, really. And so people will donate things or loan things so that you can see all this stuff, which is really neat, as opposed to it just being stuck in someone's house where no one gets to look at it. So I thought that was pretty cool. Even the old cases there, some of those are from the old stores in town. So this thing I thought was really cool, and it looks like something very dangerous that a child could easily kill themselves on because it steers in all sorts of weird ways and the rear wheels steer. It's a Mattel thing. I had something similar called a green machine when I was a little kid, and I remember wanting it so badly, and my parents got it for me for Christmas, and then I really couldn't figure out how to make it work right, and I was very frustrated by it. Oh, let's see what we're gonna find here. Oh, that icebox was neat. And I should have taken that out and put it on. You know, I've got this thing for hats. This is my second video of the day. My first two YouTube videos both happened within a few hours of each other down the Ohio River, and I started wearing hats, and that's my shtick now. I just love putting them on. I look horrible in a hat. I've got a big nose. So the stained glass windows are nice up above there. Those are really great for putting into new houses because you get color and you block out ugly views. Speaking of ugly, some people think this category is pretty ugly. This was filmed before Black Lives Matter and a whole lot of controversy over Black Americana, for example. But back when these things were made, they were considered really cute, and a lot of the people who bought them when they were new just thought that they were amusing little trifles and kind of sweet, and didn't really get the issue that black people might have with these things. Interestingly enough, it's mostly black people who collect them now, and mixed race couples. That's most of my customers. And some of them are really cool. Down on the bottom you saw a folk art doll. That would have actually been made for a black child to play with. So Black Americana kind of falls into the stuff that was cute but not necessarily well-intentioned, and then the stuff that was actually part of black people's lives. And both parts are very collectible now. Ah yes, my John Travolta moment. I remember when Saturday Night Fever came out, they had this big television special and it went on for hours and hours. They had all sorts of special dignitaries, and they even had Waylon Flowers and Madam, if you remember. She was a very bawdy marionette, sort of the female version of Charlie McCarthy, except with a much more ribald and crude sense of humor. I remember thinking she was way more interesting than disco. I was not a disco fan then. I lived in a backwater town where disco never really became popular, but oh, I remember they just hyped up that movie like crazy. I didn't see that kind of hype for musical anything until 5 years later when Thriller came out, and it was the same kind of big TV production, and everybody stopped and watched it. Let's see what we find down here. This mall is really cool, and because I was doing Periscope, I did a lot of stopping and talking to customers, and when you're going live, this place is in the middle of nowhere and the signal wasn't great, and so because of that, I didn't really get to show a lot of really cool things that they have, so I'm going to have to go back and show this one again. That seaplane is actually a tether plane. They'd have engines in them, and people would actually have to hold them on a rope while they flew around in circles. That was back before they had radio control. Let's see what we have back here. I see that, oh yes, the Piedmont chair. It's funny because so many of these folding deck chairs were actually used by churches and tent revivals and that sort of thing, but not the ones that advertise smoking cigarettes. That would not have been considered seemly. A lot of the tent revival folks were very much against that sort of thing. So these are a lot harder to find, and I think they're cool. I haven't had one in my own inventory yet. Even still, I talked about in this video how I wanted one, and I still want one. So if anyone's got one out there cheap, I'd love to get it from you. I don't expect you to sell it cheap though. These are worth probably $150 anyway, and maybe more at an advertising convention. Let's see what else is happy in the background there. Oh gosh, yes, I see something that looks like a mannequin. I don't know, we passed it by too fast. So you miss things when you're filming, and there are some things that I'm seeing as I go by that I really should have bought. I really should have looked at that Briggs Paint sign with the big hat on it, and I didn't even mention it in the video because I got sidetracked with this. This is the first time I mentioned Crazy Lamp Lady in a video, because I just discovered her when I did this. And I mentioned that this was Hager, and it turns out that it was designed by Royal Hickman, who is the Royal of Royal Hager, but actually for a different company. So I learned a few things since I filmed this one. You know, we all make mistakes and we all learn, and that's part of what I love about doing this, is that I grow from doing it as well. Those corbels with the blue up there and the stars in the corner were neat. And the other thing that I think is kind of cool is how they took that old gas can and made it into a lamp. I mean, that might be something that only Dad could appreciate, but I think it's kind of neat looking. What else is in that space? That blue thing on the right looks like some sort of a store display, and I really should have taken time to look at that too. So if by some chance they haven't sold it, I will go back and investigate that when I go there again. So this place is really big. You can kind of see in the back there, there's an entire back section. there's like 8 or 10 aisles to this, and the music was really blasting, and so I really couldn't go in a lot of the store because there was no way to edit it out of the video, plus I was talking to people live. So again, we'll come back to this place, but we're still going to see some cool stuff. This area here's got a lot of doors and architectural stuff that's really cool for your house, but doesn't video very well, so we walked right by that into Christmas land. Okay, so I've got a little beef here. This silver pom-pom Christmas tree, when I was 5 years old, I wanted one of these really badly, and they were going out of style, apparently. And my mom, we were at Montgomery Ward's, and we were to get a Christmas tree, and I said, ooh, I want that one. And she said, those are tacky and out of style. And see the white one behind? Well, the original white ones were actually like fake green sprayed with this really nasty white flocking that turned out to be a really bad chemical for you and would come off and fall on the carpet and make this big mess. And she said, that's what's current, and we're getting that. So we got the horrible, ugly white flock tree instead of the aluminum Christmas tree. Years later, my mom and I are at an estate sale in Idaho, and I saw an aluminum tree, and I said, oh wow, I think I'll get this. And she said, oh, no, I want it. I've always wanted one of those, and I just lost it. Poor mom. I have to give her a lot of credit, though. She took me to thrift stores a lot when I was a kid and got me interested in all of this. And actually, a lot of people in my family are really into antiques and vintage stuff, too, ironically enough. Even the ones I wasn't raised anywhere close to all seem to like it. It must be genetic. Back here is sort of the afterthought room, but I had to come and show, I kind of wish I had that showcase for my shop, but I had to show this pinball machine. It's got a big old crack in it. Somebody must have really bumped it hard trying to make it work, because you notice it doesn't have flippers. And the ones that didn't have flippers were really pretty much before the late 40s, I think. You just shot the ball and it pinged around, and you could maybe wiggle it a little bit, but you could tilt it and lose all of your quarters too. There are little bumpers, but nothing to shoot the ball back up with. So that means it's really an older one. And they're not as popular because people who play pinball want to be able to control the flippers. So actually, that was a pretty good deal, probably $400 or $500, and the glass is only, $50 to replace a sheet of glass. Isn't a big deal. So another thing that would have been fun to buy, but I didn't have 6 men in a truck to move it. And then we're in the back here. You see a lot of traditional furniture because this is Kentucky, and a lot of houses in Kentucky still have traditional furniture. So that's something that we're kind of used to seeing there, although this store has some modernism as well, which is nice. That's part of why I like to go there, is they have a big variety. So while I'm thinking of it, please comment in the space below here, and also hit the thumbs up button to like this video. If you haven't subscribed, click the subscribe button below. Also hit the bell below to be notified of new videos coming every Monday and Wednesday at 8 p.m. Eastern. And thank you so much for following along. Let's go back to this video. So the lime green custard is Fenton. I really like the color. People either love it or hate it. They also did a bright sky blue in that period. This is from the late 60s. And some people feel like Fenton's really overdone because you see a lot of it, but that's because it was so popular, and it still is. There are a lot of collectors. So of course I pick up the jadeite and start showing it off, and what I don't even mention, if you look behind me, is those 2 shelves full of original Roseville pottery. Now Roseville doesn't sell as fast as it used to, and it's not at the peak of popularity like jadeite is now, so I picked the jadeite, but there's some good pieces of Roseville there. All the different shapes. Those floral patterns were popular from the 20s until the 40s. And you see the freesia, you see magnolia, you see browns and greens and all the different colors they did. You see baskets with foxglove. I love foxgloves. It's one of my favorite flowers in nature. So those will be something to investigate when I go back to this place too. There's also that great bell I just walked right by and didn't even ring it. What was I thinking? I think I was thinking that the radio was so loud I didn't want to add to the noise. nice little painted pie safe there and a stacking bookcase, and just caught a glimpse of a green and cream colored enamel stove from the 1920s when they started being electric instead of being cook stoves where you had to use wood or that sort of thing. And behind me here, when I move in just a second, you're going to briefly see, I better move my head so you can see it. Let's see here. If I can do that. Hey, there we go. Whee, I'm the dictator. Okay, behind me in a minute here, you're going to see a blue and white owl jar that I have never seen before, and I'm not sure if it's American bisque, but it looks like their colors. It's going to be right behind my, well, the way I'm being faced here, it'll be my left shoulder, but it's really my right shoulder. And it's really cool, so get a quick glimpse of that while you can. There's also some neat advertising and frame prints behind me. There's the owl, see it? That was a real brief shot, but it was really cool, and I just wanted to point him out. You can freeze frame him, I guess. And let me get out of the way of Mount Hood. This is Oregon's tallest mountain in the Cascades, and it is a newer volcano, and that's why it is a perfect peak. It hasn't blown off the top and kind of become rugged and rough yet. It really is very symmetrical, and that's part of its beauty. And it's also a great place to go skiing. I went to a friend of mine from the antique business. Her son and daughter-in-law got married on the backside. It was just beautiful. What a great place to be. And let's see here. Oh yes, the DeKalb corn cob. This is another thing on my dealer bucket list. I have this chip in my head that's interesting things that I've seen other dealers get that I want to have someday too and sell just once. And this is one of them, but they are so popular. I mean, the wings are cool. I'm not sure what makes corn fly through the air, but apparently corn has wings if you get DeKalb corn. The problem is that though that graphic is so strangely interesting to people that I've never seen one under $150 to $250, so I've never been able to afford one. And they're really popular in the Midwest where they come from, so might be a while before I get one. Now let me get out of the way of Lucille Ball's sister there. I think this is such a cute way to display. I remember a friend of mine and I were involved in a booth in Centralia, Washington, and she decided to put an old refrigerator in, and we took the door off and she put it in and filled it with all sorts of kitchen implements, and then there was a little counter area and then a kitchen queen, and it was just the most darling space. When Jeffrey was still doing mall spaces at Real Nifty Vintage, he did one of his, and I think it was his most successful space. You really can't go wrong with kitchenware. If you are a reseller and you're wanting to figure out what category does well, kitchen is a great place to start because it's functional, it's fun, it's attractive. You know, people still use the same basic things that they always used. I mean, sure, we've got all sorts of fancy electrical gadgets and new types of machines, but you still need a canister set, and you still need mixing bowls, you still need all of this fun stuff, and it can be colorful too. And maybe in your kitchen you also need an alligator purse. I don't know why this was in this booth. I really wanted to buy it. It was a little more money than I wanted to spend. I think it was $79, and I get about $100 for them when I go to Florida. But this one was in really good shape. Now, they're a little weird for some people, but I think they're neat. And let's see what else is in this booth here. More kitchen fun stuff, and I guess, oh, nope, I'm not going to stay. I'm going to go on down the hall, go into the light. And y'all come back now, you hear? See above the door there. People in Kentucky are generally very friendly. I have to say it's a really great place to go. It's a good place to go antiquing. I just went on a couple of the big yard sales. You'll see in some of my recent videos the 400-mile highway sales and that sort of thing. One thing I didn't mention while I'm showing off this vitrine with the Chinese painting, which is French, even though the designs on it are Chinese, it's chinoiserie, which is what they call basically Anglos doing Chinese design. But there's another one of these. It's actually a pair. And they were sold oftentimes as sets originally because you'd have a pair on either side of a mantelpiece with your fancy things in it, or either side of a console table or that sort of thing. So there actually is another one just like it. And I didn't even mention that when I was doing the video because I was so caught up. You know, it's harder doing them live because you're so busy trying to interact with the audience that you miss stuff. There's some really pretty ruffled Chinese vases, the porcelain right behind there too, the hand painted, and those are probably from about 1900. See, there's the other vitrine. Didn't even mention it, but that's okay. I did mention this though, because I really like these things, and I do see them in Kentucky and Tennessee a lot, oddly enough. I don't know if it's because the disco balls were made in Louisville and maybe some of this lucite was made in that area as well. I'm not sure, but I'm used to seeing this more in Florida. But it's a great look for modernism. It's light and airy. This place has a lot of really nice chandeliers, but that one is made out of genuine lucite, so plastique. And oh, I like the corner cabinet behind me with the green paint and the mullion panes. That's what they call it when you have those basically sticks that divide up all the little paned windows. This thing is kind of cool. I assume it was made for some sort of a display in maybe in a store, or maybe there was a paddle wheel boat that you could take up and down the Ohio River. They have some excursions actually. It's funny to me that it hasn't become popular in the way that excursions up the rivers of Europe have, but I suppose that, you know, when you're seeing Evansville, Indiana, it's not quite the same as seeing Heidelberg, Germany, but really the river is very pleasant and interesting in a whole lot of ways. So I think that that might be something to check out sometime. I've never taken one. The cooler there is Louisville Stoneware with the grapes painted on it, and you know, the water coolers do really well in the South. Every one I've gotten is sold for $75 or $100, and well, it's because they'll use them for tea. They like to have a lot of ice water available because it is hot and steamy in the summer, I'll tell you. I spent most of this summer in the Midwest and South, and oh yes, I lost a few pounds. Okay, let's get my head out of the way again, and I'll put myself in the middle of a bunch of Pyrex. Pyrex is just so crazy hot right now. There's the various bowls right below me there. You see the ones that went along with Falstaff dinnerware that were made in the late 70s as go-alongs. A lot of these are 70s patterns that you can see here. The primary colors are more 50s and 60s, and boy, the prices have just gone through the roof on Pyrex. It's something that the generation that's collecting now really recognizes. And behind is Fiesta, which a whole lot of generations recognize because it came out in 1936 and it's still in production. The pinky color right there, right where my head is a fairly recent color, but then the turquoise and the green and the yellow there are all the original colors from the 30s. And people just love to mix and match. It's such a great pattern. It really has stood the test of time. Bunch of copperware. I've had viewers recently asking me about copper because brass is becoming more popular, and I think copper is going to make a comeback too. If you look on the set of that 70s show, you see how they used a lot of copper in the kitchen, and that was a 70s thing. And it goes really well with oranges, it goes well with brass, it goes well with some of these bright colors, and those colors actually are supposed to whet your appetite and make you want to eat more, so it's a good thing all the way around. Only thing about copper is a lot of times it's a wash over tin, so if you want solid copper, you need to really look and make sure that it's not just sort of a copper coloring on top of something. I'm not really sure what I'm waving at there. I think it was because I was talking to a viewer whose parents worked for Coro Jewelry in Rhode Island, and the costume jewelry business was such a big deal in Providence, Rhode Island. It was a really big industry there, and I just ran into someone at an appraisal fair I just did, and her parents worked in the costume jewelry industry there too. So we don't show a lot of costume jewelry in this video. Oh, kitties, yes. The cameraman tried very hard to get me to stop at the kitties, and I was a real snob about those cats. A whole bunch of other YouTubers have bought those and had great success with them, and they're really a thing. And I just couldn't get over it because a friend of mine and his wife got one as a Christmas present a wedding present actually in the early 90s. And their marriage didn't last. So somehow I have this connection of Kitty bad with that sort of thing. But Kitty apparently is good and a lot of people really love him. This is an example of over-restoration, in my opinion. It's so perfectly clean that it looks fake, but it is really an original potbelly stove. It doesn't have the mica little glass pings in it that it would have had originally. I'm going to get on my knees and propose here. Actually, I'm getting on my knees because with Periscope, what you end on is what becomes your thumbnail, so I didn't want a thumbnail of my head in the middle of a bunch of pegboard. But the potbelly stove there, it's handsome, it's great, but it needs to be used some and get some patina. Oh, and look, it's the outro already. We have the new outro now, which gives us a chance to thank all of our members, and I really do thank all of you, and I thank all of you for watching this flashback. It's fun for me to go back and see all these old videos again and see what was interesting then and what has changed in my perspective over this last year of doing YouTube. So thanks for coming along on my little trip down memory lane. And we'll have more Flashback Fridays coming up. We're going to do the first 20 episodes of YouTube that I did. The idea being that a lot of those, some of them were live, some of them were filmed while I was doing other events, some of them have sound quality issues. It's a chance to kind of revisit them and maybe come across with some different information and give them some new life and make them interesting again. But if you do want to watch the originals, all you have to do is go to my playlist, and all the originals all the way back to episode number 1 are still in it. So anyhow, thank you very much for joining me again. Have a nice evening, and we will see you soon again from the fascinating world of antiques and vintage. Thanks so much, and bye-bye now. Thanks for joining me again in the fun and fascinating antique community, here where online meets the real world. Please click the subscribe button below, click the bell to be notified when new videos upload, leave a comment below, and hit thumbs up to like this video. Links to our online social media daily posts and our items for sale are in the description. This is George at the Antique Nomad. Bye for now.